A little over a year ago, I gave you a review of Freewell's travel tripod, which pretty much stays in my backpack all the time because it is the smallest, most lightweight travel carbon fiber tripod that I've ever tested before. Well, Freewell is back, and this time they are moving up into more serious territory with their new Real multi-tripod. Essentially what they have done is try to give you the most ways that you can configure a tripod possible. And so we're going to take a look today at whether or not they have been successful in making what I would consider a medium weight tripod here that is very robust. It will support up to a 20 kilogram or 44 pound payload and gives you a tremendous amount of versatility, and it is priced very reasonably. You can have it for under 280 US dollars. Does that make this new tripod worth buying? Well, we're going to jump in and take a look and find out. Now, I regularly use tripods in basically two different flavors. I have got the big bad boy here, which is the Robust RC8860. This is the tripod that I use for my lens reviews. When I am doing my chart testing, I'm going for the absolutely most stable tripod possibly, and this guy obviously, forget having a center column, it's already as tall as me just with its basic leg assembly. It's a hardcore tripod for that particular purpose. My other flavor I typically use is this Heipi. This is the W28S. I have told you for a long time that the predecessor was my favorite tripod, and this one was even better. So essentially what we have got is a tripod that falls a little bit in between these two, but it is probably closer to the Heipi than what it is to this. In fact, even though all of the legs are thicker and the stability is a little bit higher here on the Freewell tripod, it actually weighs in, because of lightweight materials, it weighs in at a total of 20 grams less when you consider the tripod itself, just the sticks, which is a little bit lighter than what this is, and then a little bit slightly heavier ball head assembly here than what is on the Heipi, but the end product is about 20 grams lighter for this assembly right here. And so we are right, I believe we're in the 1,650 gram range, or so 1.65 kilos for this, well under 4 pounds, about 3.5 pounds. And so still very, very lightweight, but remarkably stable. But again, the real advantage here is not just in the basic kind of tripod-y type stuff. I mean, yes, it'll do all of the kind of things you would expect. And here, compared to my Heipi tripod, it will get up, pulled a little too far, it'll get up just a little bit higher, as you can see, but you know, already I'm up plenty high for any kind of practical use. But really where the strength of this particular tripod comes is in its ability to configure it in a variety of different ways. So let's take a look at that. All right, let's take a look at a couple of the different modes you can access here. So as far as reversing the tripod, you can see that there's a little bit of a tool here, but you're going to need to screw that off and then loosen this if you want to take that out. And then of course you can do the traditional reversing where you thread that in from the bottom, and so you can have, then you can lock it back down here, and it's typically smart to put this back in because it also serves as a lock to make sure that it's not going to slip down through there, you know, with the weight of your camera at any point. So that will allow you obviously to do the inverted type shooting. That's of some value. Some people will do that. It's not necessarily my favorite form of shooting, and so it's pretty rare that I invert that. With this tool right here, you can screw that out, and you can just loosen off a bolt in there, and that will allow you to remove that. So obviously now you've eliminated the lower section there, which this can just thread back into this. So now you can just lock that down, and so obviously the head's going to stay in place. And then you can do, even with this, you can shoot obviously at low angles if your desire is to, you know, to get down and to shoot like that. You also have the option then, however, to take off the main legs, which just unlock up here, you just screw them off. And you've got basically the mini legs that will produce you more of a tabletop tripod. So maybe if you're working in a smaller space and you don't want to use those main legs, you can use these instead. And so it's going to give you some versatility of not only going flat like we just saw with that, but also in this case, you can then rotate these legs into standard positions. And so you can set it up like this. You do have one short extension on these mini legs, and so that you can get it out like that. And so that is actually a really stable and strong tripod there. And then so obviously you've got some flexibility on how far down you're going to go with those. And so that in itself obviously can be useful to get you down low. Now you actually have another option with any of these. You can take this off. You can take that head off as we just did a moment ago. You're going to use that same tool that's in here to loosen off this. That is screwed off, and now with any of these legs you can screw on like this, and you're going to have your monopod. One other interesting thing about these, however, is that if you take the rubber screw on down here at the bottom and you unscrew that, you expose the spike, which obviously you can use for typical surfaces where you want to kind of embed down into the ground a bit. However, you can then also pop this onto the top of this, extend these down to whatever height works best for you, and now you have trekking poles. And so if you're in a difficult place to hike, you can pop those off. You can have the trekking poles to be able to dig in and give you nice lightweight stability. You can do that with two of those, have two trekking poles, and obviously then you're also carrying less weight on your back. And so again, very, very versatile, different options that you can do with this to quickly reverse all of that, and you're back in business. So we can see that there are a lot of different ways to configure the tripod. Obviously, that's really what it's all about. It is a 5-in-1 multi-tripod after all. But to give you a few basic other specs before I kind of give you what I like and what I don't like, in terms of the stick portion itself, it is 1,270 grams or 2.8 pounds. The ball head itself, which is user replaceable if you want to use a different ball head, it weighs in at 380 grams or 0.84 pounds. So a total between the two of 1,650 grams or about 3.6 pounds in total. Now, as far as the ball head itself, it is basically a kind of two-tier 360-degree panoramic head. And so you have the typical adjustment here where you can rotate at the base of the ball head itself, but then also you have a secondary adjustment here where you can also rotate here. And where that becomes useful is that if you happen to be shooting in a vertical position, and so you've dropped down and even dropped down into this position here, you still have the ability to loosen this off and rotate 360 degrees to make sure that you're shooting at the angle you like. Now, as far as the basic controls here, it is very much designed around the whole like knob system. And so one thing I do find is that sometimes just when I'm going to grab, because a lot of times these two main knobs end up over the top of each other, you have this smaller knob down here that allows the center column to move up and down. So it's basically just the locking for that. And then this is your main ball head movement knob. I will say that I do appreciate the fact that it's got varying degrees of tension. It's not just loosing it off and everything is immediately loosey-goosey, but the more that you loosen it, the more that there is less tension within the ball head itself. And so you actually do have a little bit more varying degrees of control there. And so the other thing that I prefer on the Heipi tripod is I love their locking mechanism here. Here you have a traditional just screw down to tighten, rotating that knob itself. There's a spirit level here in the actual head itself, though of course the problem, as always with that, is by the time you mount a camera on there, you're not going to see that anymore. And so while it's okay for your initial setup, if you're trying to get everything perfectly plumb, once you put it on there, if you may need to make any kind of angle adjustments, you're not going to be able to see that spirit level any longer. That's unfortunately pretty much par for the course. So how about things that I like and things that I don't like? First of all, as far as things that I like, I think that this has great stability for such a lightweight tripod. It really feels like more of a medium weight tripod in terms of the stability, but it's actually operating in the travel tripod weight class essentially. And so very nice in that regard. Price is fantastic. I was really pleasantly surprised when I saw the price. They had sent me their pitch of the tripod itself and I didn't know the price. I was thinking they were probably going to come back in the 400 roughly range. And so the fact that this comes in at MSRP of $280, but you can get it even less with the discount code, that feels like a really fantastic value. And again, while I love the Heipi tripod, this bad boy is more in the 500 plus range. And so, that's a lot more chunk of change if you're considering on that. Obviously, it gets good marks for versatility. You can configure this in a variety of different ways, and it's, I find that in general, particularly once you figure out how to do things, you actually can assemble and disassemble things really quite quickly. And the only tool you actually need to set up any of those modes is really just this little screwdriver type tool that is located right built into the tripod itself. And so as far as needing to carry additional tools with you, you really don't need that to do any of the configuration on that. So, that's great. I appreciate that. It does feel very well made as far as, tripods. I have had issues with certain tripods in the past, particularly when it comes to these joint locks like this. Everything I can tell so far, it seems to be sturdy, and obviously they are trusting in their engineering in terms of the strength of these legs, because the fact that they can be used as trekking poles means you're going to be putting weight and friction onto those as you go. And so these locks are obviously designed, once you've gotten them down tight, they are really locking in place and are secure. I also think that the design looks good. These little bit of chrome accents just adds a little bit of style to it. Of course, there's the carbon fiber here, and then also, the foam on two of those legs, which probably the ones that I would recommend using for your trekking poles if you're going to do that. All good. I like the look of that. I do appreciate the versatility that is here in the head, and particularly, I've reviewed tripods before, Peak Design, where their travel tripod did not have panoramic control. Here we actually have dual panoramic control, so that is really, really fantastic. Some things that I don't like, I have seen better angle locks than these before. They're not bad and they look good, but I just find that sometimes they are a little bit stiff, although it does seem like as I've used it, they are loosening up. And so maybe that is a complaint that is becoming less of a complaint. But anyway, one thing, I prefer the design with the integrated phone clip that's built right into the head itself. This has a clip that's integrated into the QR plate that comes with it, and so you can utilize it for that. It's just, to me, not quite as intuitive as the Heipi design. I also will note as a final criticism that if you're looking, this is not being marketed as a travel tripod, and it definitely doesn't collapse down quite as tight as what travel tripods do. You can see here that it's about 11 centimeters longer than the Heipi tripod that I regularly use, and it only gives you 7 centimeters of additional height. And so if you're really about compactness, that's not good math, that you have, a bigger package to produce less significant in terms of overall height. And so, one thing to bear in mind there. So my conclusion is this does feel like a great bang for the buck tripod. If you're looking for versatility and stability, the lightweight of carbon fiber, but without the huge price tag associated with some, I feel like this is a great value. And so the whole package you're getting, it's good value for money. I wouldn't say in my mind that it's quite as innovative as the Heipi in terms of some of the engineering features. There's just a lot of really great thought that goes into this. But again, you were looking at a tripod that basically cost about 100% more in the Heipi. And so this feels like really good value for money. So at the end of the day, if you are looking for a versatile tripod that also happens to be lightweight and stable, well, check out the Freewell Real 5-in-1 multi-tripod. It might just be your new best friend. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day, and let the light in.